Okay, guys, Fusion 360 then. It's fairly straightforward to create rubber bands. Essentially, you start out by creating, well, you start with a sketch, and then you start by creating a cylinder. And from the cylinder, you can set the height after you've done the cylinder. Free orbit down the bottom here. You can rock this around so you can then look at the thickness of it. So you create yourself a cylinder. After you've created the cylinder, you go and modify it to turn it into a shell. And then once you've modified it into a shell, you can delete the middle section that sits in here. Otherwise, you'll end up with a sort of bottom in here. And you can see that here, look. So cylinder, you end up with that flat bit at the bottom. You delete it out. You set your thickness. I've set my thickness, I think it's 20 millimeters across and 0.5, I think, millimeters, but you can experiment whatever thickness suits you best. I'm finding that providing your printer is printing out TPU okay, that it will print pretty good in about 0.5 millimeter. Looks very when you print it, it doesn't look like it's strong enough, but as soon as you let it cool down and you stretch it over the Sycamore and lock it into the two slots, it holds the either 2025 or 2032 battery, 3-volt battery in there really nicely. Difference between 2025 is 2.5 volts and the 2032 3 or 3.2 volts battery is a bit thicker, so and it works with any LED. Once you've done that, then you would go into Fusion 360 and you go and do a save it as a project or whatever, and then you export it. Choose export, and then choose to export it as an STL file, and then it will go online to complete that task and compute it, and then pull it back as an STL file, and typically it's going to save it to your desktop. Once you have done that, so I'll drag in V3, all right. Once you've done that, I would recommend setting your head temperature to 205, although you can experiment depending on what version of TP you've got. Your build plate temperature can be anywhere between 50 and 60, your flow rate 102, your print speed, keep it slow basically, 45 to 50 millimeters per second. Doesn't need any build plate, rafts or brims because it's fairly thick anyway, and if your build plate's good enough, you shouldn't need a brim on here. And with TPU, as you know, it's very rubbery, so it's probably not, and this does stick quite well on a build plate, unlike PLA, which typically requires a brim, depending on thicknesses, etc. Set your experimental, this is in Cura, experimental settings to slicing tolerance middle. Nothing else apart from top and bottom layer of 2 and a wall thickness of 1. I think that's the key things. And then slice it up and preview it, and let's just play this, see how it plays out. And I like this feature, I like the play feature, because you actually get to see what the printer will do. Yeah, which is what you want to see. I like to say what you see is what you get, and pretty much this is running, everything's dialed in on your temperatures and your feeds. Don't forget, if you're using an Ender or Anycubic or any of those other printers, you will need to set your retract settings to get good quality prints. I've found my retract settings seem to be optimal, about 6 millimeter on the retract distance, 0.685 for the extra prime, which is the amount of material you pump back into the head after you've retracted. And I think these are defaults 50 millimeters per second, but the key one is enable retraction 6 millimeters. Seems quite a lot, but it is about right for typically the Anycubics or the Enders. Any extra prime just helps put material back into the head after it's retracted. So apart from that, there's other profiles you can use on the internet. It should print out okay. Anyway, good luck with the project. Hope you enjoy the rubber band.